Hi everybody, it's JJ and we're back again for another ASUS PCDIY hardware live stream. Hopefully everybody is wrapping up the week on a positive and productive footing, enjoying your Friday, and hopefully you're getting ready to have a good Friday night and a good weekend. So we've got a few different things to actually go ahead and jump into this week. We've got actually some new product announcements, some exciting ones if you guys of course are part of our ASUS PCDIY group. You guys of course have had the opportunity to check out some cool announcements that we've made regarding earlier this week. We actually introduced some new graphics cards. We've also got some updates to some prior graphics cards that were previously announced. So we're going to be actually talking about some new updates that we've got for our mini PCs, an update to actually our motherboard in terms of our business series, which many of you might not actually be familiar with. We then have, of course, the exciting kind of availability information coming up for the ProArt series of graphics cards that we announced a little while back for both the RTX 4080 and for the 4070 Ti. And we are going to be touching on the essentially the new updates that we have specifically for the 4090 series with the TUF Gaming 4090 OG model, as well as the actual ROG STRIX 4090 LC model. So we've got definitely quite a number of different things to be able to jump into. We're also going to, of course, be taking a look at your guys' systems when it comes to the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. So we've got some awesome systems. I know at least two of them where we're going to be taking a look at an awesome build from LiquifyMods, and then we've got a build from none other than a great member of our community, H2O Computers, who does some awesome water cooling stuff. If you guys are not checking both of them out on in terms of their respective social media channels, definitely make sure to go ahead and follow them. It's a great place to be able to be inspired and be able to kind of see some of the really great stuff that happens, especially if you're interested in liquid cooling based setups. Let's see who we have joining us here in the stream today, and we'll get ready to go ahead and start jumping into things. Hey, Liquify, man, happy to have you here. So again, guys, actually LiquifyMods, great builder, great modder, very, very cool. And let's see who else we have actually joining us here. We've got Michelle joining us. Hey, fantastic to have you here. Hey, Michael. Yeah, I can go ahead and maybe adjust that a smidge. Let me know. We can go ahead and make a quick adjustment on that side. So let me know if that's okay. We've got Sue Min joining us as well. Happy to have you here, Sue Min. H2O Computers is also joining us. Fantastic. David, thank you for joining us. The one, the only Sniff, of course, one of the best builders in the game, is also joining us here from our friends over in Canada. Everybody is joining us. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And hey, Michael, happy to have you here as well. So thanks for joining us on the stream. And I think, yeah, Erica, as always, thank you so much for letting us know that the audio sounded good on your end. Fantastic. And Michael, I did go ahead and adjust that volume level, so let me know how it sounds for you if it's okay. But we should be all right. Before we do go ahead and jump into that, we just do want to give you guys a little bit essentially of an update. So many of you are essentially aware that we have gone ahead and already issued a formal press release statement for actually any users that are essentially running X3D series CPUs and ASUS AM5 based motherboards. I do want to go ahead and actually link you to this, guys, in case you have actually any questions. You can essentially go ahead and reach out to our service and support team. The link is actually right here. I will go ahead and drop this in the chat right here for you guys. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and review that. We do actually also have this as a featured post. We've actually had this as a featured post for our very first in progress announcement within the PCDIY group. So again, if you're a part of our PCDIY group, you can actually click over into that tab. It has the corresponding links to which actually provide guidance in terms of a UEFI release, as well as actually any corresponding information in relation to this. For some general updates that some of you may be interested in as well, there are a few things that we have actually been doing to continue to make sure that we're supporting our customers that have any questions or concerns or inquiries. One thing is, of course, we've already been coordinating with our internal services support team to be able to prioritize these cases. So they're definitely aware in terms of everything that we've been doing in terms of our product management side, working with our local logistics team. Essentially, any one of those items has all been relayed to our service and support team. So if you have any questions, you have any concerns, you want to be able to reach out to maybe initiate a warranty assessment or be able to discuss other options, feel free to go ahead and reach out to our service team. They're there to go ahead and take care of you in that respect. In addition to that, we've also gone ahead and coordinated with actually a broad number of our partners. So this includes actually system integrators, our distribution channels, and part of this is to help to make sure that they're aware that we have essentially UEFIs in place, and we're going to continue to be working with AMD to release essentially forthcoming UEFI releases. There's also been some discussion regarding some users looking at essentially beta releases versus formal releases. And so we've talked about this actually in the past regarding the two different type of releases that are available. And we still recommend actually if you are running an X3D series CPU that you do update to the latest formal release. Now you do also have betas as an option, but we are going to be working with AMD to release essentially a future formalized release that also contains newer GISA. So if you're waiting essentially for newer GISA along with the current essentially 1.3 SoC voltage guideline adjustment, just go ahead and just make sure to keep it tuned. We'll announce that here on the stream. We'll announce that within the group, and we'll also announce that within that primary thread that I've gone ahead and noted. But as of now, you essentially have multiple options. You can, one, if you're maybe a user that has your CPU and you have your motherboard, and you haven't built your system, you can use our USB BIOS flashback feature, which means that you can actually update the UEFI without a CPU, without the memory, without the graphics card. You just connect the power supply, you take a flash drive, have the corresponding file, and you can update the motherboard directly to the formal UEFI release. You also have another option that you can go ahead and load up the current UEFI, and you can run in F5 defaults, so essentially not engage in any performance tuning. Or if you want, you can also go ahead and utilize the 1303 series UEFI release or the corresponding release for your model that has the SoC voltage guideline implementation. And if you want to engage other performance tuning parameters like Expo, you can do that. For users that have been, again, wondering about the beta release, we will be revising the notification that is noted there. And again, we are going to be supporting our customers. So again, if you have any questions regarding that, feel free to go ahead and reach out to our services support team in that respect. All right. So that hopefully gives you a bit of an update in terms of that. If you have any other questions, like I said, feel free to go ahead and check out the corresponding note that we have in the featured post announcement within the group itself, or you can go ahead and take a look at, like I said, our formal press release statement, or you can also, like I said, reach out to our services support team, and they'll definitely help to clarify for you and follow up with you in any terms of other questions or comments that you have. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and go into our next portion right here. So we actually have a pretty cool update, and this is actually going to be for those of you that I think have been interested in a controller. So a while back, actually around I think CES timeframe, we actually talked about our Rakiri Pro. And so our Rakiri Pro is a very cool controller, and it's actually our first kind of ROG centric controller. And it's designed to actually be a tri-mode based controller. So that means that you're essentially going to have 2.4 gigahertz low latency wireless connectivity. You're also going to have you're also going to have USB-C connectivity, and you're also going to have Bluetooth. So this controller gives you 3 different options. So for the majority of you, you're probably going to be considering a wireless form of connectivity. But for me, I also really like using a USB-C cable. I like also that I can customize and swap out the cable if I want to go and kind of maybe stylize a little bit more, kind of go with my setup. Some other cool points that this actually controller integrates is that it has a OLED live dash display, so you can see information like battery, you can see profile information, you can set custom GIFs and animations, you can get a lot of readout information, and of course it's customizable within the software suite. It does have onboard memory. You do actually have some cool kind of design implementations also here to kind of help to evolve how you can utilize the controller. So if we actually take a look at the rear, you're going to see that you actually have these what are called like trigger locks. The trigger locks actually allow you to have a little bit more flexibility, that you can kind of adjust essentially those triggers. So if you want to maybe be more FPS centric versus driving centric, you can adjust that. So you actually essentially have 2 different levels of customization and kind of experience available to you in terms of how you use the controller. You got rear buttons as well that you can go ahead and map to pretty much your heart's content. You can go in the software and control those pretty much any which way you'd like. You can remap them. We have advanced dead zone compensation and adjustment within the software suite, which is also great to be able to kind of really dial in your preference in your user experience. You can just see here some of the key elements that we're going to be offering in terms of the software experience, but it's quite robust, quite deep, and quite dynamic in terms of what you'll have the ability to go ahead and customize. Another really cool point too is actually that this does integrate in ESS Saber DAC. The ESS Saber DAC and amp gives you essentially an improved audio experience. So you can see if you kind of jack in your headphones, you're going to be able to go ahead and have a little bit more punchy, a little bit more lively, a little bit more vibrant audio experience. So overall, it's a pretty cool controller. I'm very excited about it. And if you're somebody that appreciates using a controller when you're gaming, maybe you're into racing games, maybe you like actually playing FPS, not necessarily with a keyboard and a mouse, but with a controller, or maybe you're into action RPG, fighting games, whatever it might be, if you're interested, this is actually now available for pre-order. So let me go ahead and actually bring up the pre-order link for you guys. And I will go ahead and share that with you. So give me 1 second here. I believe I do have the link. 1 second. There we go. I've got the link right over here. And I will double check and see if anybody's got any questions in that regard. So give me 1 second here. There we go. So here you guys can see we do have an actual active pre-order right now going over with our friends over at Best Buy. And keep in mind, as we get to kind of the broader channel availability, you will actually see this become available at more and more e-tailers and retailers. So it's not just going to be exclusive to Best Buy. You will see it at other e-tailers and other e-tailers and other retailers, right? But right now, just initially, the pre-order we do right now have present with Best Buy. So if you are interested in it, you can go ahead and pre-order right now. Let me go ahead and note this right here. So give me 1 second. All right, there we go. Very, very cool. Let me go ahead and just see if we got any quick questions on there right there. So Matty Mill is asking, what platform is it sitting next to me? So this one right here, this is our Prime Z790-A motherboard. I've always been a big fan of the Prime series. It's kind of like a little bit of a space theme, but we do have Prime series for both AMD and for Intel-based motherboards. Actually, I think the X670E version actually even looks a little bit better than the Z790-A. The cooler is actually our older cooler. This is the original ROG STRIX LC, but we do currently have the ROG STRIX LC2 in white. And then we also, of course, have the ROG Ryu in white, and then we also have the upcoming Ryu Gen 3, which will also be available in white. So we have quite a number of actually coolers that will be available in white. In terms of, I'd say kind of the fitment or kind of the SKU note that you're talking about, that probably has to do more with maybe your chassis, because I mean, pretty much the radiator is a fixed dimension, right? So it might be just maybe kind of one of those variables that sometimes when you mount maybe the radiator, if you add a little bit too much torque when you're torquing it down, you can get a little bit of flex in the radiator, which can kind of cause it to do this. It can kind of just move a little bit. So it'll just kind of divot down a little bit. So you might want to try to make sure that you're evenly torquing across where you're mounting the radiator, and that can kind of stabilize it. Similarly, also, if you don't use sometimes washers on the fans, same thing, you can kind of sometimes compress the fans and can create a little bit of kind of an askew perspective. So again, you just might want to kind of maybe reevaluate the amount of torque that you're using, or maybe reevaluate if you're kind of using washers. Washers can help to kind of a little bit create more even distribution in terms of your placement and your fitment. All right. Okay, all right. And again, if anybody has any other questions regarding, like I said, our AM5 related update, like I said, feel free to go ahead and reach out to our services support team. We have actually multiple pathways. So I've talked about it in the past, but if you're not familiar, just to kind of recap which options are available to you, we actually have a live chat option that we have available. You can, of course, reach out via phone. You can also reach out via email. And we also actually have our My ASUS app. And the My ASUS app actually is available on multiple platforms. So we actually have it as a Windows downloadable application, which actually also can allow you to start your RMA or your warranty inquiry process if that's kind of an easier pathway for you as opposed to maybe going to the website. And we also do have the My ASUS app available on mobile devices. So you can go to the corresponding app stores for either Android or iOS to go ahead and start that process and download the application as well. So there's quite a number of different options. I do believe I have corresponding links to those within the service and support post and the announcement post that we have in the PCDIY group. That's also, again, if you have any commentary where we recommend that, where you kind of, if you have any comments, feel free to leave them in that space. It makes it a little bit easier for people as a whole to kind of see a consolidated space as opposed to having multiple redundant type of posts. But again, we have that post has been active since essentially our first initial announcement, and also coincides to feature our current formalized PR announcement, which has essentially all the up-to-date information that I've just recapped for you guys. All right. Legit Gamer goes, how can I turn off? So this is actually interesting. Not all actually items allow for it. You have to remember that the way that these actual devices work is that they actually connect to an internal USB header. Most devices that actually use modern standby don't actually get permanently turned off. So if you kind of really want the fail-safe option, you have to turn off your system, which means just flipping the switch on your power supply and fully turning off the system so that there's no active power. For certain devices that do support it, and not all devices do, there's actually a shutdown behavior option. Let me see if I can quickly actually show you here. I think right now this system I do have an active OS, so give me 1 second and see if I can actually show you this setting. 1 second here. I need an HDMI cable, guys, and then from there we'll go ahead and move over into our other updates and our other announcements. But give me a second here. We also do, I didn't note it yet because we're just right now rolling it out, but we will have actually a new Armory Crate update coming out, which actually will contain some new cool elements regarding lighting adjustment. But I don't want to talk about that too much yet. Probably within the next, like 4 to 7 days, we'll have more information on that. And I'll post that as a featured announcement post, again, within the PCDIY group, and probably maybe in next week's stream, I'll maybe actually do a little bit of a demo of it to actually show you the new UI options that you'll actually have available to you. Mark is noting setting in the BIOS. This is actually wrong, Mark. There's actually no setting in the BIOS specific for that function. There's a toggle option that you have within the UEFI that will allow you to essentially enable stealth mode, which has to do with the onboard motherboard lighting, but it's actually not specific to USB initialized based devices. The correct way to essentially have a device shut down, if it supports it, is going to be within the UI interface and enable and toggle the shutdown behavior. So it's important when you're essentially attempting to make those adjustments that you actually go through the correct option. DBLOT, our focus is not the design and development IQ. That's another company's product. We do maintain essentially a limited level of synergy and support because we do actually have an open SDK to allow for Corsair users that want to be able to have synchronized support. So we will maintain that, just like we actually have like a pathway of support for also like a NZXT users and CAM users that want to be able to run integration. But our primary focus in development is on the ASUS Aura ecosystem and all the devices that natively connect to a motherboard and can interface seamlessly without secondary controllers or secondary plugins. Right now, take for instance, like all other memory on the market doesn't require a secondary plugin. So G.Skill, Kingston, HyperX, Gel, AData, right, Patriot, all of these partners, right, they natively, let's say, have direct memory control, or even fans. While we have our own RGB fans, you know, Aska, Thermaltake, Fractal Designs, right, Lianli, actually all these partners, they use a standard 3-pin header and can connect in the motherboard and allow for direct control. So our focus is to continue to evolve and improve the feature set and functionality. And if you have feedback, we actually have a dedicated Armory Crate forum and you can drop feedback in there. But let me go ahead and quickly cover this point for this one user, and we're going to keep moving things along. So let me see if I can quickly do this. All right, let me adjust my little spot right there. So there you guys go. I'm going to need to connect a mouse. So I wasn't expecting to do this, but I'm going to quickly show this. So give me 1 second here. Again, I don't know. I haven't actually used this operating system in a while. I was actually doing some testing on it. It's a developmental build, so I don't know if everything is actually installed here. But if it is, I'll see if I can show you the actual toggle function. But the toggle function is going to be in the shutdown behavior option. So you would go like right here, and you would pick your actually corresponding devices. And once you actually pick your corresponding devices, then you would actually adjust the shutdown behavior. So you'll see actually right here, there's no shutdown behavior. But if I show you, take for instance, like on the motherboard, we'll go ahead and we'll load the motherboard. You can actually see right here where it says shutdown effect. So the shutdown effect, instead of you actually having a function or a feature implemented, you would actually engage that to off. Right? And so now what that will do is you can actually still see, if I switch back right here, I haven't actually turned off the LC. The LC's RGB lighting is still actually present. It's still dynamic. But now when the system actually shuts down, the motherboard's lighting, which would be right here, would not actually be lighting anymore. Now, not all devices have that support. Some of them we may sometimes be able to retroactively add that in there. So if you have a device that you want to see it specifically an ASUS device, right, then feel free to go ahead and send that feedback to our service and support team. So hopefully that answers your question in that regard. Michael, they already do show the same color, right? But you also have to realize that they're limited controller interoperability factors, right? One is designed for addressable per LED lighting and the other isn't, right? But right now, if I was to connect a 4-pin legacy device to this motherboard and have this other fan, I can set them to red and they will all show red or they will all show blue. It works best when you're not going in an addressable pattern because, of course, addressable has a much more dynamic range in terms of the number of actually colors that can be rendered, right? So some of it is also kind of realizing that this is a big difference between kind of a locked ecosystem where you have like a controller that will manage all the devices versus when you kind of have a open ecosystem, which is what exists right now with motherboards, where you can actually have like a legacy device. You could have something like an older graphics card that doesn't have ARGB lighting, or you could have a 4-pin header that is going out to an older type of LED strip or going out to an older fan. And then you could have a newer, DRAM kit, which is addressable LED lighting. And then you're attempting to try to kind of make a certain essentially profile or color scheme work across all those type of devices, right? Okay, so I think that covers us there in terms of the Rikiri Pro. If anybody could just double check for me if I did actually share the link for the pre-order, that would be fantastic. If you can let me know that, that would be good. All right, so next up, I think let's go ahead and get ready to touch on some new updates here. So give me 1 second, and we're gonna go into our new graphics cards. Somebody asking about the Ryujin 3 Canada release. I can't tell you specifically, as we already have a featured announcement post that exists in the PCDIY group that says our kind of target that we're hoping for the Ryujin 3 is going to probably be in late May, so the end of this month, moving into June timeframe. Okay, so just make sure and keep it tuned, right? We will announce once it's getting ready to actually have a full channel available release in the weekly stream like we normally do for new products, like the ones that I'm trying to talk about right now, as well as, like I said, there's always a post that we have in the PCDIY group, right, for new products this week, and that will let you know essentially when those are occurring, right? So let's go ahead and take a look here. So the first one that we're going to get into, before I get into the new product specifically, are just going to be some of the new announcements. So the first one that I want to touch on right here is going to be on the TUF Gaming GeForce RTX 4090 OG, right? And that's going to be this guy right here. So it's going to look pretty similar to actually our last generation. And the big reason is that it's not using the same actual PCB. It's not even using actually the same thermal solution. The thermal solution has to be redesigned for the new PCB and for the layout specific to the 40 series GPU. But the ID design and it being a bit more compact is really where the key difference is. So this card is actually dimensionally going to be quite a bit shorter and a bit more compact in terms of dimensions compared to the TUF Gaming based 40 model, the original 40 model. So the 40 model will feature an even higher performance, essentially thermal solution. So that means that essentially it will run even a bit cooler and a bit quieter, but the performance here is still going to be very, very good in terms of its overall thermal efficiency. So this actually will still be cooler and quieter than pretty much an FE class card, but it will be more compact. So for those of you that might have been a situation where you're maybe a little bit more limited and you couldn't fit in the larger graphics cards like the TUF Gaming 4090 card, then this definitely might be a viable option for you in terms of consideration. Let me go ahead and bring up the exact dimensions here for you, so if you're interested in kind of knowing what they break down to, I can also go ahead and drop that in the chat there. But we do actually have a full post here in our PCDIY group that actually covers the card in detail. So I've gone ahead and kind of detailed all those specific points. So again, if you're kind of interested in finding out about the card, how it breaks down and all those points, we do actually have a post here. So give me 1 second here and I will bring that up. Yeah, so dimension wise, what you're looking at in terms of the dimensions is going to be, this is 325, so about 326 millimeters by 140 millimeters by 68 almost 63 millimeters, right? So 3.2 slots versus 348 by 150 by 100 by 72, right? So the TUF Gaming is a 3.65 slot card, and this one is going to be a 3.2 slot card. Okay. So there, you guys. I've gone ahead and dropped that in the chat there for reference, right? Mr. Matt Lee says, I need to set my Ryu 3 to show Z's on the LED matrix when it's in the powered off mode. That sounds pretty cool. Yeah, that would be a kind of cool little level of customization, right? Mark gives some feedback, says, I would buy a 4090 ProArt. Yeah, thank you. Right now, we're only going to be talking about a 4080 and a 4070 Ti. Our team is evaluating essentially potentially having a ProArt model in terms of the 4090 class. Again, though, because the 4090 is even a more performant and there is more thermal considerations, it's quite a bit more challenging to hit the exact same dimensions that we did for the 4080, where we're talking about a 2.5 slot card and a much more compact set of dimensions. Here, I think the TUF Gaming model is a very good option for those 4090 users that are looking for a much smaller 4090 based graphics card, right? And similarly, you're not compromising on a lot of the quality design implements, right? So you're still going to get our Auto Extreme production process, a high performance VRM assembly, right? GPU bond technology, our axial tech based fans, right? You still get a premium metal shroud, backplate, right? Which also has thermal pads. So even the max power limit is the same, right? Both of the cards actually support a maximum of 600 watt in terms of customization. You can still overclock the cards if you want. So you still essentially fundamentally get the same experience. It's just going to be like I said, a little bit less performant in terms of the thermal design compared to the 40 series original version, right? Which features, like I said, a much larger heatsink assembly and even a larger set of fans on there, right? So it's designed for even a higher level of thermal dissipation performance. Okay, so that is going to be the update there for the TUF Gaming 4090 OG. And now let's go ahead and give you guys the update here for another 4090 variant, which will be the ROG STRIX 4090 LC. So if you're not familiar, right, the 4090 LC, what does that mean? That means liquid cooling, right? So here we are essentially leveraging the very popular design that we had in the prior generation. This was featured on both AMD and NVIDIA series graphics cards that we did offer. So this ASUS based solution, right, it allows you to have a high performance, essentially AIO cooler, right, but integrated directly into the graphics card design. The cool thing is that all of the cabling is already pre-connected and routed inside of all this sheathing. So you as a user have to connect anything. There's nothing you need to connect to the graphics card or to the motherboard. It's all done. You physically just have to install the graphics card, and then you have to mount the radiator. Dimensionally, this is quite compact for 4090. I wouldn't classify it as being like truly compact because you still overall have to use more space inside your chassis, because this is a 2.6 slot card, which is quite a bit more compact than even the TUF Gaming, which is 3.2 slot. But once you install the graphics card, that's it, you're done. Here, you still do have to account for your tubing, and you still have to account for mounting in essentially a 240 millimeter radiator. If your chassis can support dual radiator configurations, then great. This could be a viable option for you. Performance is very good. It's going to be just probably a little bit cooler than what we would have with our ROG STRIX 4090. The ROG STRIX 4090, though, technically I will say will actually even probably be quieter, and also probably carry the benefit of having a little bit even lower probably VRM temperature and memory temperature. But again, from the overall performance perspective, they're going to be almost parity, right? And this actual large base plate does make contact with the GPU and the memory. And then this large assembly right here actually makes contact with the rest of the PCB and the VRM components. And then you have a blower fan right here, which helps to provide air across that, right, to be able to go ahead and maximize the cooling. You then do have an active, well, not an active backplate, but you have a metal backplate, which has the thermal pads, which helps provide a little bit of passive thermal dissipation. It's not its primary role, but it just helps to add a little bit of value in that perspective. Looks good both vertically and horizontally. Has a nice little RGB accent right there if you go in the horizontal mount, and of course it has a very bold and bright RGB design accent if you go with the vertical mount. And this can also be all controlled within the ASUS Aura application, right, inside of Armory Crate. You then have your standard 12 volt high power connector right there. So of course you're good to go in terms of that. And you still do have the dual VBIOS design, which means you have a quiet mode and you have a performance mode. It's up to you as far as choosing them. Effectively, the performance is almost about parity between the two. It changes kind of a little bit of the fan profile. So if you're looking for a little bit of a quieter experience, maybe you've got your system closer to you like here, right? Then maybe you want to run maybe the quiet profile. If you've got a little bit further away, or maybe you game with headphones and you won't notice a little bit of the ramp that increases between kind of performance and quiet mode, then you can use the P mode. But ultimately the choice is yours. You pick whichever mode you have the preference, and you can always also go into the software and fully customize the fan curve yourself, right? And speaking of fan curves, this card does still also maintain the Fan Connect 2 headers that we see on the ROG Strix series graphics cards. So if you want to connect additional fans to the rear of the card to have essentially additional control flexibility for like temperature input mapping for, let's say, front intake fans, you can do that. So you could connect like 2 fans in the front of your chassis to the graphics card, go into the software and say you want those fans to respond to the GPU temperature and not the CPU temperature, and those fans will actually ramp up and respond to the GPU temperature. So that is what we call our Fan Connect 2 header design, and you'll find that on the ROG Strix series graphics cards. Okay. Hey, Adam. If you have any questions regarding essentially, like I said, our AM5 update, feel free to reach out to our service support team. We have gone ahead and already issued essentially our UEFI BIOS release in coordination with AMD. So you can go ahead and load that up. And if you want to run, your X3D series CPUs, you can do that. And that's available for our entire range of AM5 based motherboards. Okay. All right. Ploy, I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. Is that Ploy TH9000? Any increased power limits? The power limits are actually the same as the increased power limits that we had on the ROG STRIX 4090 graphics card. So the actual power limits are already enhanced on the Strix card compared to, let's say, like the TUF Gaming. So the default, what's called TGP rating, is 450 watts. The RG Strix card actually has a 500 watt power limit, and then its maximum power limit through customization can be 600 watt. So to your point, yes, the card actually does have increased power limits at default, which allows it to be faster in terms of its performance, right? It's not a huge increase, but it gives you a few extra frames. And that also aligns with that the Strix card has a factory overclock as well, right? So it has increased power limits and it has an increased GPU clock speed. So both of those have been increased on the graphics card. And then of course you can still further enhance that through GPU tweak, where you can go in and you can customize the VF curve. If you want to go ahead and adjust your power limits, you can do that as well, right? Hey, Mods by Ben, happy for joining us here on the stream. Thank you for joining us here. Michael asks for some quick feedback right here. He says, would consider it if it was a 360 versus a 240? And that's actually something that we did consider. The main reason why we did not go with a 360 millimeter radiator is because it's about mechanical compatibility. The reality is that 240 works really well for the broadest range of system configurations. If you went with 360, it would very much be a hard stop for actually a larger number of chassis, especially micro ATX based chassis and even SFF based chassis. So people that are building like mini ITX systems where they can even fit a 240 millimeter radiator, but they cannot fit a 360 millimeter radiator. Same thing for micro ATX. And then also there's less chassis that can legitimately fit like dual rad configurations when you're talking about maybe having like a 360 and a 360 or 240 and a 360. The temperature performance delta also between going with the 360 to a 240, it's very, very minimal. You're not talking about like it's going to be 10 degrees cooler. Probably in most scenarios, you would probably be maybe talking maybe in the range of probably about 1 to maybe 3C. Maybe could be a little bit more than that. It also does depend on your fans and how performant the fans are. Fans heavily influence the performance of your radiator, and the thickness of the radiator is also a factor. But essentially right now with this design, you're already talking that the card's going to be operating in the low 60s in terms of gaming temperature. So it's very, very low in terms of the operating temp. So the value proposition of essentially increasing the mechanical compatibility issues that can happen for us, it doesn't make sense, right? So if you really kind of want a 360, then it would probably make more sense to start considering a custom water-cooled card, right? And both our TUF Gaming and our RG Strix series support custom water blocks. So if you wanted to go with the 360 rad or 420 rad, you could entirely do that, right? The choice is entirely up to you. Somebody's asking about the price. We haven't defined yet the price yet, so that'll be coming a little bit later in terms of that when we actually get ready to release this in terms of channel availability. So this is just a soft announcement in terms of that regard. Lano sees, are you showing off the Rakiri Pro today? I just got in a SCUF, might have to see how they stack up. Yeah, I think there's quite a number of things. It's actually, the SCUF is the same price point, right? I think both 169, but we have a more advanced dead-eye compensation, right? We have the ESS Zebra DAC, we have the OLED screen. I think our build quality feels even nicer. So I think actually it goes really, really well. So hopefully, yeah, feel free to reach out to our team. If you guys aren't familiar, Lano C, still one of actually a really great place that you can go find out to actually get some really good quality in-depth reviews on a wide range of component hardware. So Wes, ping us and let us see if we can go ahead and maybe get you situated with maybe a Rakiri Pro. But I don't have one hands-on with me. Hopefully I'll get one and I can do a future stream and kind of go hands-on with it and be able to show it people and kind of talk a little bit more about all the customization and everything that we can do. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and Hey, Facebook user, I already actually talked about that in the very beginning of the stream. So if you want, you can actually just go back and you can go ahead and note essentially an update that we've given into that. And you can also go ahead and check out our formal link that I did share in the chat, which actually has our last formal announcement, which actually provides an update in regards to X3D and AM5 series users. Okay. Okay, so next up, let's go ahead and go into, I think, yeah, the new graphics cards. So the actual graphics cards that we can talk about that are going to be coming out here. So next up here, let's go into, I think, the ProArt series. So I think we're going to go ahead and do that. So give me 1 second here. And I will bring up these cards. So give me 1 moment. And bring up the images here for them. And here we go. So we'll start, I think, with the 40... we'll probably start with the 4080, and we will kind of go from there. Okay, so the first one that we have right here is this is going to be the ProArt GeForce RTX 4080, and I'm also going to give you guys a little bit of the performance data that we have, because I know this was a question in the past when we first talked about is like, what was the kind of expected kind of compromise, right? Because to some degree you are going to be compromising because you are going to be seeing a smaller overall heatsink assembly, because the goal here with these cards was to be able to achieve a more compact form factor, right? So when you take a look at the larger cards, you're clearly going to be over 3 slots, right? These cards for both the 4080 and for the 4070 Ti are 2.5 slot, right? So it's quite a bit of a reduction, right, in terms of that. But I can tell you the thermal performance is actually quite good, as well as the acoustic performance for these cards, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. But let's go ahead and take a look here and see what you get. So this is just the included GPU standoff and support, which also can optionally work as a small screwdriver, right? You can just put that on your desk, right? A nice little accessory. These are the items that come included, right? You have your legacy, essentially 12-volt high power adapter right there. So if you have an older ATX like 2.3, 2.4 specification power supply, then you're good to go. You get some hook and loop fasteners, quick start documentation, a little paper kind of cell phone or smartphone holder, and then also the accessory card, which just is kind of like we get people that like to collect these cards, right, as they pick up the different graphics cards. But here's the card itself. It has a really refined, clean design, ID design, which very much mirrors the design aesthetic that we have with our ProArt series products. So if you're not familiar, ProArt is one of our series of products, right? So we have ProArt laptops, we have ProArt monitors, we have in future, we will have future ProArt products too that I can't fully talk about. We of course have ProArt motherboards, this is where it started. And now we have, of course, our ProArt graphics cards. And we also even have some ProArt accessories, like we've got ProArt mouse, and we've got a mouse pad and some other items, right? So this is also kind of a category that will continue to be fleshed out over time with more and more items. You'll see that really kind of nice, just kind of gold accenting. It's not heavy. It's there to just be able to provide a little bit of contrast, and I think it looks quite nice. Of course, the reality is that for the vast majority of people, they don't install a card vertically. They install it horizontally. That's also what I personally prefer. So let me know in the chat. Are you team vertical or are you team horizontal, right? Which one's your preference? A really nice premium shroud design right here. These are, of course, our ring barrier axle tech based fans. So that means that they're static pressure optimized to give you a little bit better downward firing force, right, to be able to create essentially just a better experience in terms of the cooling. It works in conjunction with the heatsink assembly. When we take a look at the back right here, we have that metal backplate as well. We have a large venting area. Again, that's there to be able to assist within the thermal dissipation characteristics, a little bit of that ProArt branding and that nice, like I said, black and gold contrast that you have there. One thing that I really like that you may not notice, and let me see if we have a side profile, is this is very subtle. We haven't done this in a very long time. I remember previously working with our team on our Matrix series where we actually did a black heatsink assembly. So this actually does require a different treatment process, but it really adds an additional kind of level of continuity and consistency to the design. So I was really happy to be able to see this reintroduced. We already do like nickel plating. So if you'll actually look at some other companies kind of graphics cards, sometimes you'll see on the inside, it'll have like copper exposed directly. And sometimes that can of course get oxidized and it looks a little bit kind of not bad, but I think it can reduce a little bit of kind of the premium kind of perspective of the aesthetic of the card. So it's nice to always kind of see the entire heatsink assembly all nickel plated. So you'll see that our other graphics cards, they're all nickel plated. They look really nice in that regard. But here, I think just the black heatsink along with the black design on the graphics card as a whole just looks really, really nice. So it's a nice detail point that you're going to see there on the card. And that's probably my favorite profile that exists for the card, is just that nice, clean, horizontal profile. You can actually see how it's quite a bit less thick, right, in terms of the number of slots, right? So it's not a 3.2, it's not a 3.6, you know, it's not a, you know, a 3.4, right? It is a 2.5 plus, right? So quite a bit more compact in terms of the overall graphics card, right? So I also like this. Sometimes people look at cards and they will comment and say things like, "Oh, it looks, you know, really square. It looks like a brick." One thing I really do like about our our 40 series is that, you know, you'll see details like this where you have like a chamfered edge or a chamfered corner, and that really actually just, again, it adds a really nice, I think, aesthetic feel to it. A little bit of more of a polish and a little bit more of a premium kind of attention to detail in terms of the design, because you don't have a chamfered edge on a brick, right? But it's nice to be able to kind of have this where you just see that nice curvature that's in there. And it also adds just a little bit of reflectivity in terms of how kind of light hits it. It's pretty cool in that regard. So overall, quite nice. So that is going to be the ProArt 4080. Also internally, the VRM is still it's a very good quality. It features our ASUS Auto Extreme production process. It has GPU bond, 15K rated capacitors that are on there, fully molded alloy base inductors. So overall, again, you're not compromising on that, and even subtle things like we're using a stainless steel IO plate, which actually I think we're like the only manufacturer in the industry that does actually a full stainless steel IO bracket that is on our graphics card. So that is going to be the ProArt 4080. Now, in terms of the temperatures, so what are the temperatures, JJ? What are we going to be looking at? I guess I can leave that open there, right, in terms of the visual right there for the card. But maybe let me actually show here. Give me 1 second. I kind of liked that other shot there, right? So you can kind of see it. Yeah, you can see it side by side there, right? So overall, in kind of an extreme synthetic stress test, so something like FurMark, which again is not representative of an actual game or an actual application, you're going to be seeing about 71 degrees. 71, 72 degrees. Now keep in mind, every GPU, there's a little bit of variance from one GPU to another GPU to another GPU. So if you literally took 10 cards, they're not all going to be the same exact temperature. Some cards are going to be a little bit hotter, some are going to be a little bit cooler. There's a normal deviation that exists between all cards. And then you also have to account for your ambient environment. So your temperature that you have, your system's configuration, resident to airflow, and other aspects like that. But in terms of our internal testing, that's what we've generally seen in terms of about under kind of an extreme, very heavy load with FurMark, which, like I said, is not representative of normal application use or games in either scenario. So generally your temperatures you would actually probably see below that 71C. But if you want to kind of use 71C as that very, very heavy load, that is kind of a reference. And that also is nominally at around 44 dB. So overall, definitely this still meets the mantra of what our goal is in terms of a card of being cool and quiet and performant. So you're not going to sacrifice, you're not going to see throttling in terms of this 4080 being that it's not offering a 4080 class level of performance, regardless of whether you use NVIDIA Studio drivers or whether you use the game ready drivers, right? So we are targeting this more to creative professionals, people that want to be running Adobe, Creative Cloud applications, DaVinci Resolve, right? Autodesk, Revit, different types of things along those lines. But at the same time, if you just really like this design and you want to put this in your gaming system, go for it, because of course you can pick the driver that works better for you, right? Game ready driver, or you can pick the studio drivers. Both of them are available to you, right? It is your choice. So that is what you're going to be looking at for the relative kind of temperature performance, okay? Let me go ahead and just quickly see if there's any questions right there. Michael gives us some feedback right there. It says, this looks perfect, the black. I would really agree. I think it looks really, really nice in terms of the overall design aesthetic right there, right? David gives us some feedback. I would love to have the 4090 for this in terms of the black and gold. Yeah, again, it's something we're evaluating. You may see a future update, but as of right now, at least for the ProArt, you're only going to be seeing a 4080 and a 4070 Ti. If that changes, definitely rest assured we are going to be communicating that. And Hitesh, definitely we are, like I said, we have actively provided notices. We've been actively working with our service and support team, with our channel partners, and also actually we're going to be issuing, like I said, the same recap that I noted out to our media partners as well. So again, if you have questions, concerns, feel free to go ahead and reach out to our service and support team, and they can definitely assist you in helping to best understand what we've gone ahead and put in place to help to best support you, okay? And Michael asks, is this bond with the extra support corners right? Yeah, so the GPU bond, I don't know if I have an immediate image right here. I don't know if I have a card that I have immediately on it, but essentially it's part of the production process that essentially, yes, it's on the four corners of the GPU die, and it just helps to add essentially additional level of kind of durability and improvement to reliability in terms of the production process. And so essentially, it's just kind of the totality of other elements that we have as part of the total design of the card. So when we talk about something like Auto Extreme, it includes a lot of different parts, right? We use one generalized term to kind of denote the SMT production, the validation of the components, the optical inspection and analysis of the graphics cards. There's tons of things that kind of go into that, but that's kind of just one part that kind of ties into that, okay? Last question here before we get to the 4070 Ti. Is there a large delta in temp mounted vertically versus horizontally? The heat pipe configuration will work pretty much well in both scenarios. As far as kind of like how much you'll see a benefit horizontally versus vertically, that's always tricky. Horizontally, I think, is the best option. Vertically, you generally will see a higher likelihood that you might have higher temperatures, and that's just because you may run into more maybe obstruction issues, right, where it might be closer against the side panel and you might not have as much airflow ventilation. Maybe it's a little bit more offset from the airflow pattern that's coming in from your intake fans, but a lot of that is very much dependent on your system configuration and your airflow configuration. You can still have very good thermal performance for both vertical and for horizontal mounting. But in most situations, I think if you are trying to prioritize thermal performance, a horizontal mount is probably going to be the preferred option for you, okay? When will the Ryujin 3 release? I noted that a little bit earlier. Again, we have a featured announcement post in our PCDIY group that has gone ahead and talked about that. And we actually have a specific timeline release that's actually noted there. So our target is going to be somewhere probably around the maybe very end of this month, moving into June. And again, when we actually are getting ready to release those, we will have actually a channel availability announcement. It'll be posted in our group. We'll talk about it here on the stream. And I'm hoping to actually get some samples in here, and we'll actually maybe do like a live demo, actually go through the really cool design elements, the new faster performing screen, right, 60 frames a second, show the daisy chain magnetic design, maybe be able to show the white and the black version because they look really great in both the black and the white type designs. So just make sure to keep it tuned, okay? Nick says, is there any black and mold motherboard? Yeah, of course. That's actually going to be our ProArt series of motherboards. So our ProArt series of motherboards really kind of perfectly complement those cards. So let me see right here. If I have actually any images, I'll show you right here. But let me see right here. If I've got one. So I thought, yeah, I thought I had it. There we go. Yeah. So as you can see right here, Nick, like I said, these have been really designed to very much complement our current ProArt. And you don't have to have a black and gold motherboard. Any black motherboard will pair perfectly with this because gold is an automatic contrast point to black. It will look perfect with any black motherboard, and pretty much actually all the motherboards already meet that criteria. TUF Gaming boards are pretty much monochrome. They're pretty much black. The ROG STRIX series and the ROG series are also similarly pretty much monochrome. They're black. So this would go perfectly with any one of those boards. But if you want to have even kind of like a smoother kind of like tie-in, we have ProArt Creator boards for both AMD and for Intel platforms. This is our B760, but we also have a Z790 version. On AMD, we have everything from like a B550 version. We have an X670E. We have a B650 version. So we've got lots of ProArt based motherboards at different price points for different chipsets that would all pair very well with either one of these 4080 or for these 4070 Ti based models, okay? Okay. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and go into the next one right here. And we will go, give me 1 second right there. And now let's go ahead and touch on the next model, which is pretty much going to look the same. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it's pretty much the same look and feel in terms of the overall model. And I will share the link in the chat, guys, if you guys want to actually check it out. So just give me 1 second and I will go ahead and share that in the chat there. Let me go ahead and bring up my images right here. But the 4070 Ti, it's gonna pretty much look like the same exact thing because it is pretty much exactly the same exact thing. So the images are gonna look all the same because dimensionally pretty much they're the same, right? So 4070 Ti, 4080. Both of them will be available. And let me go ahead and now actually touch on the pricing information. And again, you know, like I said, aesthetically, they're both going to be pretty much the same, right? So again, we'll have the 4080 or you're going to have the 4070 Ti. So pick the model that, you know, works best for you, resident to your budget, and based on the performance that you're going to be, the performance target that you need, right? So in terms of the actual pricing and availability, you'll see right here for the ProArt for the 4080, it will be coming in at $1399 in terms of the actual MSRP price point. And then for the 4070 Ti, that will be coming in at $849.99. So pretty much about the same pricing as that we have for the TUF Gaming graphics card. You pretty much are kind of in a parity in that situation. Just pick, you know, the card that comes right for you. Do you want like the TUF Gaming 4080 or would you want the ProArt 4080, right? Or similarly, do you want the TUF Gaming 4070 Ti or do you want the ProArt 4070 Ti? Now, in terms of availability, we also are co-working with actually system integrator partners. So you actually first see availability from one of our powered by ASUS partners, which is going to be Falcon Northwest. So we're excited to actually help to launch this card with a partner like Falcon Northwest. And then in about probably June timeframe, you'll actually see our channel availability release. So that means actually that's when you're going to be looking to have this card be available. So whether you're going to be taking a look at, you know, the ASUS store or e-tailers, whether it's like Newegg or other e-tailer partners, you'll see it kind of come in that. And we'll try to provide an update on not only the PCDIY stream, but also in our PCDIY group for those that are going to be interested in picking up this card when we're actually getting a little bit closer to that channel availability in the June timeframe. Okay. Hey QWERTY, how much do I haven't checked that recently. Not as light as I was, you know, maybe at my peak of my weight loss, but I'm still pretty happy where I am right now. I think probably somewhere around maybe like 220-ish or something like that. I'm a little bit taller individual, so I tend to hold weight, I think, a little bit better. I'd love to be maybe a little bit lighter. I think all of us generally try to target that, but about 6'2" and 220. All right. Weird question, but you know what? Try to help to give you some perspective there. All right, let's go with that. Hey, GP Stuntman, happy to have you here. Thanks for that, and you'll be good to go. Hi Tish, we already talked about that earlier. So right now you can already go ahead and download the formal release, which contains the SoC voltage. The betas will also have, like I said, have revised wording, which will be actually removed. So hopefully that won't be any point of confusion for anybody in the future. And like I said, we are already working with AMD and our own R&D team to incorporate the new AGISA. You always have to remember that there's a timeline differential between when an AGISA is issued and then us being able to integrate that AGISA and validate it. And that takes a certain amount of time, right? And so that is the reason also why in past sometimes you will have a beta release, right? Because there's essentially that period of time where sometimes people want to have access to new AGISAs just to be able to kind of try things out before a formalized release comes. But rest assured, we will have a formalized release which will contain the newer AGISA as well as the corresponding SoC voltage guidance that was already been implemented in the current, let's say, like 1303 release. So again, you can go ahead and be notified of that. If you're kind of joining our PCDIY group or watching our weekly stream or watching out for our UEFI bias announcements, which we also actually release in the group. So again, we will be working on that. And once those updates are made available, again, if you're working with like our service and support team, they can definitely alert you to that. Or like I said, you can also check corresponding updates, which like I said, we communicate through our service and support team, through the PCDIY group, or again, here, even on the weekly streams, where usually at the beginning of the stream, we'll talk about new UEFI releases for our motherboards. All right. Really, I've never had anybody be bothered. Are you saying this light is bothering you? Sorry. If I can confirm right here. I'm not sure which user it was. CTTV user, are you talking about this light, or is it this mouse? This mouse is bothering you. I'm not sure which mouse, but I've never had anybody say that this mouse is bothering them. But hopefully if it's the other mouse, I went ahead and removed it for you, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and keep things moving along here. So that's gonna cover that. Next up here, let's go ahead and touch on some new mini PCs that we've got. You guys know one of my favorite products is actually our mini PCs. But actually with that, before we get into the mini PCs, let me make sure to share in the chat the link there for the ProArt graphics cards. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop that in there. So give me 1 second. I have the links here for both of them. And the link information does also confirm the pricing, I believe, so you can have both of those points there. So 4070 Ti, let me go ahead and drop that in there. Nick Brown notes, my Chakram has front RGB. I love it. Yeah, I love this design. It's one of my favorites. I really love that the Chakram has this like cool little front design. One of my favorites is actually this model right here, the Pugio, which has this like cool little underlit kind of design, and then had like this little diffuse line right here. That's what I was hoping that we would update and use this, but a challenge that we also always have with mice, right, is that you add more RGB and you add more weight, and you know there's been a lot of people that always kind of want sometimes to go to a lighter weight. Chakram is pretty reasonable in terms of its weight. I like it though because I actually like having a little bit of heft, because also I'm a bigger individual, 6'2". I've got bigger hands, and I like having actually a mouse that has a little bit of weight to it. It's not too heavy. I want to have some weight, but I also want to be able to have a little bit more comfortable resting points for things like my pinkies or my thumbs. Because for me, and I think actually for a lot of gamers, right? What's your opinion? Is ergonomics or weight more important? For me, I really think actually ergonomics is quite a bit more important than weight. Once you probably really break a certain weight class, ergonomic is really, I think, going to be much more critical than necessarily if you're shaving off, 10, 15, even 20 grams off of a mouse. It's not really that much of a difference because you can build the muscle memory to feel comfortable with that. But if you've got hot spots or your hand is kind of in a certain kind of position that it doesn't feel comfortable, the ergonomics really are going to be critical, and you can't change that. So I really do think ergonomics for me are, I think, the most important part. Okay, so but as I noted, guys, there the pages are up there for the ProArt card, so that does also contain just a recap of some of the information that I've already talked about. It doesn't know, like I said, the temperature information that I already gave you and the dB information, but I've kind of given you that information, so you do have that available to you. So if you guys want to be informed in that respect, it is there. So let me go ahead and drop that in the chat for you guys. And also, if you guys are interested in checking out some beautiful photos, I think I did see our friend Mr. Matt Lee from across the pond is joining us here in the stream. So you can definitely go ahead and check out his social channels. He had the opportunity to actually work with our ASUS UK team and just get his hands on the ProArt card. I haven't even got my hands on yet one. Guys, I haven't got one, but he got his hands on it already, and he took some beautiful photos of it, and I'm sure you'll probably be seeing that paired with a ProArt motherboard. I think Matt was actually telling me he was actually maybe looking to put together a ProArt based system, which he might be using for his personal build. So rest assured, you're probably going to be seeing some more ProArt based graphics cards if you're checking out his Instagram and his YouTube. So make sure to go ahead and check him out on those corresponding social channels. All right. Let me go ahead and see there. Yeah, Show Computer knows. Yeah, the Pugio is what I'm using. Yep, I would agree. Okay. So I think I dropped that in the chat there for you guys. You guys are good to go. Let's go ahead and jump into, like I said, these mini PCs. So some of the really cool things that, mini PCs have kind of really started to change in terms of their perspective is going to be the performance and the feature set that they offer, right? In the past, it definitely used to be quite a bit more common that you would be a bit more limited in terms of what you could really do with a mini PC. But now with our latest generations, where you're talking about you have high performance, 11th gen, 12th gen, 13th gen series processors, right? You have mini PCs that literally can have 16 threads, can support DDR5 memory, PCI Gen 4, Wi-Fi 6E, dual PCIe NVMe M.2 SSDs, right? Have 2.5 gigabit LAN, right? That's really, really impressive for something that is literally, this compact, right? Literally is this small. It's pretty cool to be able to have that. And we have a comprehensive lineup of Intel and AMD based solutions, solutions that are, going to be at a lower wattage and solutions that are going to be at higher wattage, right? So it just really comes down to what are you looking for? And so here we're actually going to look at two really good kind of contrast options that are going to be available to you. So the first one is going to be this model, which is going to be the PN42. And the PN42 is an exciting update because it's actually going to be a fully passive solution. And when we talk about a fully passive solution, what do you mean? It means that there's no active fan. So this unit is essentially designed to run fanless. So it's essentially silent. It's not going to output any noise. It's utilizing the new essentially Alder Lake, essentially ultra low wattage part. And this part means that you get a modern performant core architecture, which means you can still kind of have snappy performance, but it's very conservative in terms of the amount of power and the amount of heat that it produces. There's two variants. You have the N100 and you have the N200. The models that we're initially going to be offering are going to be the N100. But that N100, like I said, is still going to give you 4 cores of that Alder Lake architecture that's going to be present in there, and you still have some really nice robust level of kind of functionality and connectivity here. So if we take a look, you can see that you've got high-speed USB there on the front, right? You've got a mic jack, an audio jack, so if you want to go put it in your headphones. You have an infrared receiver right there, so again, if maybe you want to use this as maybe like a media bay, right? Or you want to use this like as a media center. Some users that might use this as an emulation platform. This could also be interesting. The LED that we have here are also, we're going to touch about, we actually made a really cool update here, which actually it serves as a debug LED. It can actually notify you of some issues. If you're using the bare bone model and you're setting it up and you maybe run into an issue, you can actually get a little bit of debug information, and we'll talk about that. You can then also see that you have a large amount of I/O on the rear, where you have another 2 USB ports, then have another 2 high-speed ports. You have DP and HDMI, 2.5 gigabit LAN, and a secondary 2.5 gigabit LAN. That's right, this unit is one of our first models that has dual 2.5 gig LAN. So if you're somebody that maybe is running like a virtual machine, like a Proxmox type setup, maybe you're running a SAN or a NAS type configuration, this is really cool. Pair this up with one of our 2.5 gigabit routers, right? On the LAN side, run that in, and then run one of these other to your system that also has 2.5 gigabit LAN. And now you've got a really cool external performant kind of enclosure that can serve data across your network, right? Very, very cool. And again, you also have high-speed Wi-Fi 6 that's built into this unit too. So you can also have high-speed wireless connectivity and also modern Bluetooth connectivity with Bluetooth 5. Now this configurable port, we are already going to have it pre-configured. Our model will have DisplayPort. That does mean that this unit will actually support multiple displays. So you can actually run 1, 2, 3 displays all simultaneously from the integrated graphics, and that would even include decoding of HD video or 4K video. Again, dimension size, you can see just how compact we're talking about. Essentially a little bit less than 58 millimeters by a little bit less than 128 millimeters, right? Pretty cool, right? So very, very cool design, fanless design. And the other part that I'll note on here is going to be, like I said, that button where you can see that the LED light, depending on what it indicates, where you're going to have like a blue light, yellow light, red light, cyan, green, will give you an indicator to know that there's an issue that's occurring within your system. So the bare bone models that we have, what are bare bones? They come with the CPU, but they don't come with the memory, and they don't come with the storage, and they don't come with an operating system. So it's up to you to install your memory and install your SSD and your operating system. For most users, they'll install Windows, although we do some partial validation with Linux, and you can check our QVL for more information on Linux interoperability if you're interested in running a Linux environment. An easy tool list design right there where you can just slot in your M.2 base SSD, so it's not complicated, it's quite simple. And you can also see that we have a robust kind of control center, and the control center is pretty cool. Again, if you maybe have multiple of these set up and you want some out-of-band management type of options for monitoring the system, you also have that available to you. And last but not least, we actually do quite a bit of validation on the mini PCs. Not all mini PCs disclose this, but you can actually see right here the aging time, the relative humidity, and the chamber testing. And there's also other tests that we do, like line level voltage quality and other assessment points, so that again, because a lot of times for these units, you're going to put them like maybe on a corner or on a shelf, maybe not touch it for a long time. So it's important to kind of just know that you're going to be able to run this. So bare bone operation, as you noted here, right? Like I said, you can easily access to install that SODIMM module, the M.2 module, and you also have support for a 2.5 inch SATA SSD. So that is going to be the PN42. Okay, and let me recap the pricing for you guys on this model here. CCT user says this would be perfect to put near a TV and a home AV system for streaming music and Plex. Yeah, that's a very good option. Again, especially because of the power envelope that it has, especially that it's fully fanless, that 2.5 gigabit, the fact that you can add storage to it, right, with like those 2 SSDs. I think our PN64 is even going to be even better option for that type of scenario, especially if maybe you want to run a little bit more performance like filters, or maybe have even some emulation kind of performance. That could be a more exciting option. But again, there's a lot of different ways to use these models. So it really just comes down to kind of what you're looking for, right? Okay. Silent Sea Wolf, yes, the PN64, that's actually my next PC. That's literally the next mini PC that I'm going to be talking about for the US market. Okay, so don't worry, I'm going to be touching on that one. Give me one moment here to wrap this up though here on the PN42. So for the PN42, I'm dropping the link in the chat right here for you guys. So that model we will have available. And again, if we do go back, we will have a couple of different variations. So depending on essentially the specification for the unit, you'll want to check that at the e-tailer. You'll see it priced between $220 to $260. Okay, so again, $220 to $260. So just make sure that you're looking at the specifications to clearly see what is the configuration and the IO options that that unit has. Okay, so all of these units, those should all, I believe, be N100 base variants. None of them should be an N200 base variant. So do keep that in mind. Okay, so that is going to recap the PN42. Okay, all right. Next up, though, we're going to now go ahead and touch on here, going to be the PN64-E1. So the PN64-E1 is definitely going to be a very, very high performance based unit. This is going to be for users that are definitely going to be looking for, I think, that higher end experience. Essentially, I would say almost really kind of laptop type experience that you would want from a mini PC. And here, really kind of the specifications are going to be speaking for themselves. So you can see right here, this is going to be coming with a 13th gen, right? The latest generation, right? Raptor Lake based architecture in here. Now, it is going to be a reduced wattage. So this is similar to kind of the same laptop performance, excuse me, similar to the performance you would see in like a laptop, like maybe something like our VivoBook or like an ExpertBook, right? 35 watts, I believe, is the actual wattage target here for this model. But very impressive performance, right? Because you've got your P cores, you've got your E cores, so great for just general productivity, even for actually some pretty good robust application performance. Monitor editing could actually even be done on here, especially if you're using web-based applications, but you could totally load Creative Cloud on here. You could load DaVinci Resolve, you could load Lightroom. You can do a lot with this system because of that 13th gen architecture. You have of course, high-speed specification support with DDR5. This literally supports DDR5 memory, so you can run even larger densities that in the past would not be possible in a mini PC, where with two SODIMMs, we're going to see that you can have, you know, not only 16, 32, 48, 64 gigabytes. In the future, you'll even be able to see larger densities than that, right? You also have impressive storage, right, where you can see you've actually have two PCIe Gen 4 M.2 SSDs, and you also have a traditional SATA 2.5-inch SSD. So you literally have 3 drives that are available to you inside this unit, has Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2, and can support 4 displays simultaneously. It literally supports 4 displays simultaneously. So quite performant in that regard. Some other cool things too here is that this does use a new higher performing thermal solution that we revised specifically for this generation, which includes a copper base plate, copper heat pipes, along with a more optimized fin density. So you essentially just get better temperature performance, and that is going to just help to ensure a better class of performance. We also introduced new tuning options. So you have different profiles that you can go ahead and set, like silent, standard, different fan configuration parameters. In the past, they were kind of handled automatically for you, but here we're giving users a little bit more granularity control where you can kind of pick and customize your fan curves. You also have the integrated, what we call anti-dust self-cleaning design, which is pretty cool. We actually brought this over from our laptops, and what you see is actually it helps to kind of isolate and separate a bit of kind of the dust and debris dander from actually kind of settling into the fan hub assembly and in the heatsink assembly itself, right? And so this can be important, like I said, over time. It's not something you'll immediately benefit from, but 3 months, 6 months, 24 months in, this type of design can be beneficial at helping the unit essentially maintain its operation over time. High-speed connectivity, of course, with options for things like Thunderbolt support, rich high-speed I/O. Actually, all the I/O on here is all high-speed, right? That means there's no low-speed USB literally on this unit. It's literally high-speed across the board, which is really, really, really cool to see. On the model that we will have, this E1 model, it will feature a DisplayPort connection. So that's the reason why we essentially have the total of those 4 displays. So 1 display, 2 displays, 3 displays, and 4 displays. So the unit can support up to 4 displays. And this Thunderbolt port, I do also want to call out that it's special because it supports PD-in. Why is PD-in important? Because if you pair that with like an ASUS monitor that supports USB PD-out, right, like 96 watts, you could actually power the mini PC with a single cable. You could power it and provide the display all in that one single cable. So that's a pretty cool feature. If not, of course, you can utilize the standard DC jack, which will also provide you the best performance. But for maybe somebody that wants more flexibility, maybe using a USB-C GAN power adapter or like a high wattage USB PD power bank or something like that, it gives you even more flexibility. You could kind of really be truly mobile with this. It's pretty cool in terms of the flexibility you have available to you. All right, so that is going to be the PN64. In terms of the specification support, right there, you can see it will be coming in the not too distant future in terms of availability. Probably, I would say within about the next 2 to 3 weeks is probably what we're going to be targeting in terms of its availability timeframe. Okay. Hey Shelly, if you have any questions, we don't actually have any service and support teams directly right now on this stream, but please feel free to reach out to our service and support team. Let me see if I can go ahead and actually share the link with you, but they definitely can help to work with you in terms if you have any questions regarding warranty or an RMA or case number or whatever it might be. They can definitely work with you in that regard. Again, we have live chat, we have email, we have phone, a number of different options that you can work with our team in that regard. So they definitely can work with you on that. So Shelly, let me go ahead and share that with you in the chat. Just click on that button and you can go through the prompts. Like I said, there's a live chat option if you want to attempt to go ahead and just go through that option. Or if you have a prior RMA, then you can also click through and kind of check on the current status. Okay. Mr. Matt Lee, yes, I did touch on the pricing, so let me go ahead and retouch on that one more time. Let me go ahead and just open that up. But I did note this a little bit earlier. So just again to recap pricing right there, and because I'm going to touch on the pricing again for the mini PCs, right? $220 for the ExpertCenter Mini PC, right? For the PN42, it'll go between $220 to $260. The PN64-E1 goes up to $840, and then for the ProArt cards, right, the 4080 is going to be $1399, and then the 4070 Ti is going to be $849.99. All right, very, very cool. So that takes care of our mini PC updates. So overall, that actually wraps up all of the items that we actually had today for today's stream. So now I'm just going to get ready to dive into the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, guys. Be able to go ahead and touch on some of the great builds that we have submitted by you guys here in the community. As always, if you're interested in submitting your system for a feature here on the PCDIY Builder Spotlight and across actually our ASUS social channels, all you got to do is just be part of our ASUS PCDIY group. So you can go ahead and join us. If you guys are checking us out on, should be visible if you're joining us on Facebook and on YouTube. I don't know if you guys are checking us on Twitter, if you can see it, but we do have a link to our PCDIY group. You can search for it. We actually have a submission form. You can go ahead and submit the form, upload a few pictures, answer a couple of questions about your build so that we can share them. And we'd love to feature your build, whether it's an air-cooled, water-cooled, modded, ATX to mini ATX, it doesn't matter. We just love to be able to show off ASUS-based systems that you members in the community have put together. So pretty cool. So let's get ready to go ahead and take a look here. All right, give me 1 second here and we'll go ahead and take a look at our first build. Hi, Shelly. Like I said, you can reach out to that team. If you have a case number, if you actually have a case number or an RMA number, feel free to go ahead and email me at pcdiy@asus.com and I'll relay it to our service team and then they can follow up with you. If you're finding that there's a discrepancy, we can definitely go ahead and do that for you, okay? So again, if you have an actual case number or an RMA number, go ahead and send that over to me at pcdiy@asus.com and I'll go ahead and I'll relay that to our service team and then they can follow up with you, okay? All right, let's go ahead and bring up here our first submission. Let me see what we have slotted for today. I think first up, we're gonna go with our friends over at LiquifyMods. I don't know if they were still in the stream. Hopefully they are. And we will go ahead and take a look at their build. Very, very cool. All right, let's go ahead and take a look here. So LiquifyMods, and they did not give us a name for the build. So, you know, if you guys watch the stream, you know what I'm going to ask you, right? Essentially, let us know what you think the system should be called because we didn't get a name for this build. And I do like having builds with a name, so let us know what you think it should be. Shelly, as I noted, if you have both, feel free to go ahead and send that over, and I'll relay that to our team. All right. All right, let's go ahead and take a look here. It's I think a very cool build. I love the color scheme. You know, it's and they do a great job. It's hard to really, I think, negate this build in any way, shape, or form. So let's go ahead and take a look at it right here. Very, very cool. So the first thing we're going to notice is we've got definitely a bold and bright system. I almost wish that we had actually a little bit more of an exposed photo. I feel here it's maybe just a little bit underexposed, but I think the underexposed gives it a little bit of definitely a vibe. But the first thing is you see is that really kind of cool bold and bright exterior chassis, and then you of course see the really cool contrast that you start to introduce with of course black, and then you've got the silver and you've got the white, and then you're bringing in kind of that kind of purple tone, and it has a really kind of cool kind of synthwave vibe, a little bit kind of modern and edgy. The lines that we see here within, I think the actual layout looks really, really cool, and I'm really a big fan of this. I love kind of this kind of tiered, kind of almost waterfall type of effect where we're bringing out the tubing, right, and then we're bringing all this way down. And the big one is you can see right here is that if you're not noticing, this is a full custom reservoir that's inside there, right? So we've got a reservoir and distro that's kind of built in there. That's really cool. That it's just so nicely integrated. You're not even realizing that it's part of the show, but it's part of the show, right? And it really just adds a whole interesting element because, of course, the way that all of the runs have been implemented, they're leveraging that. And I believe this is custom designed by No Reason. George No Reason, and so we'll see if we can share all that corresponding information there. But there's a great post that Liquify has done in our PCDIY group if you kind of want to see all the information, and we're going to go over the build specs and everything here. But again, really love the layout choices that we have right here as far as, like I said, giving some visibility right here to the actual screen that's on the left hand side of the board. You can see they also went with a monoblock design, which is pretty cool. The monoblock just gives you that little bit of more coverage. In reality, you don't have to use a monoblock. A monoblock is not required. The board has a very performant VRM and big performant VRM heatsink assembly, but some people like the look of a monoblock on a board. It just feels a little bit more kind of contiguous, a little bit more complete to them in that respect, right? We can see that we've got 4 DIMMs inside there, right? We've got the tubing that runs down there, and then we of course got that big pump and res. Really nice setup right there, but overall, really do like the look and vibe here. And then we can also see we have a little bit of kind of customization, some subtle modding that's been implemented here, of course, with the ROG logo kind of panel that's down there at the bottom. And you can see also sit right there next to the Thor in terms of the power supply. But let's continue taking a look at the build here. So there we can see, and now a little bit more of an exposed photo. You can see a little bit more of that dynamic lighting, and you can see the really cool thing that I really like is that point of that, you know, I think seasoned builders and modders, they're not afraid to have hard contrast, right? Sometimes people have to kind of match everything, so they're going to go like everything needs to be black or everything needs to be white. And I'm actually a fan of color blocking because color blocking gives you contrast, right? It lets you show off when something is dark, and it lets you show off when something's bright, and it lets you play around with that. And this is a really cool kind of representation of that, because the white is giving you a little bit more reflectivity, a little bit more brightness internally, and it helps to kind of just give you that uplift as opposed to kind of really blackening everything out if you had a black chassis, right? You'd still have the contrast definitely from the RGB lighting and from, of course, the tubing. But here, I think this works really well between the white, the black, the silver, the purple. They all kind of come together and I think look really nice, right? Oh, that's really cool. The eye is actually part of the loop. Oh, okay, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, in terms of this actually goes into that bottom portion. That totally makes sense. Yeah, so it just gives you that visual element of that. That's really cool. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish taking a look right here. Really clean, of course, on the cable management. I mean, they're pros, so you got nothing to negate here. I really love this tube and razor reservoir combination. It goes, I think, perfectly with the look here. I also really love this here. If you guys don't notice, one of the cool things that we do with the actual poly mode design that we have on the motherboard is that it's kind of designed to look really good without RGB lighting or with RGB lighting. And here you can see that in kind of certain angles, it almost takes on this chrome-like appearance. So even if you're not kind of actively having something in the display, it still has, I think, a cool design aesthetic and kind of just helps to kind of complement the whole look and feel of the build, right? But overall, fantastic build. I mean, there's nothing here that I would negate. I think it's done really nicely. The fit, the finish, the polish, the custom work here in terms of the, you know, this integration. And yeah, I can definitely see now where it's actually all part of that, right? This has actually been placed on top where you can see this entire, of course, res and distro, which is part of the whole loop. You can see that that's just portion of it. So it's all tied in together. Really nicely done. And here now you just look at that beautiful work, right? It's almost like you can't see it fully without kind of getting that angled shot, but really, really nice there, right? Yeah, GP Stuntman, I'm with you, man. Team horizontal. I'm a big fan of it. And right here, I think this is a great showcase of why I love a horizontal mount, because you create some depth, you create some contrast, you got a little bit of that bottom space. And I love this just RGB line that kind of pops right there. It creates a little bit of synchronicity and kind of consistency here with this line and this line also, right? So very cool. Let me go ahead and bring up a couple of images here to kind of focus in on, and we're going to bring up his submission form. Give me 1 second here. And we'll kind of bring up a couple here. Let's go with those two. I think those two are cool. And we will look at the submission form. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and see what we got going on here. So again, this is going to be from LiquifyMods, guys, and he is actually currently in the chat, and I believe he's from it's a course from overseas, from Greece, I believe. You guys can check him out on Instagram. So let's see the name of the build. Excuse me, does the build have a theme? Yes, you could say ROG, and that definitely makes sense because we have some ROG hardware in there. We have, of course, the Thor. We've got the ROG Eye, which is part of the loop. What are 3 words used to describe the build? Is we've got unique, intricate, and powerful. I would definitely agree. I think all of those are cool. We got some unique layout choices in here. It's definitely intricate in terms of the kind of the design layout, and definitely performant and powerful, right? Does the build have a name? No name, guys. So let's go. Let's see. Let's hit 15 seconds. Drop us some names. Let's see what it should be called. In terms of the core components, this is going to be an AM5 based platform. So it's running an X670E Hero, a 7900X, an ASUS ROG GeForce RTX 4080 graphics card that's then, of course, water cooled. Then has a Thor P2, so our latest generation P2 1200 watt power supply, 128 gigabytes of DDR5 memory that is in the system. Now that's interesting choice. Generally, you know, AMD has a reduced port table, so that means that when you go into either 4 DIMMs that are either single rank, or you go in 4 DIMMs which are dual rank, you're actually going to reduce the actual memory controller's scaling support in terms of how fast the memory can run. But I'm assuming here the requirement maybe to go with 128 might be for the user might specifically need, you know, a high density configuration. I recommend though to users, if you can though, try to keep within generally a maximum of 2 DIMMs, even if you go with dual rank. Dual rank will still be lower in scaling than single rank, but if you can do that, you'll be able to generally run, you know, generally higher scaling. But in either scenario, you know, you're still talking about a very performant system, right? Total budget here in terms of the system here is going to be about $8,000. What aspect of the build were they most proud of? Is the overall aesthetic. I would agree. I think it looks fantastic. Is there anything that you would change about the build? Nope. I like it. I would definitely agree with that. How long did it take to put together the system? Total altogether, I'm assuming in terms of like the design, getting the custom distribution, right? Planning everything out, getting all the parts. It says about 5 months, give or take, right? And what is the system used for? For gaming and design is the 2 primary usage points. And then overall, one of the favorite ASUS functions or features is they are actually a big fan of ASUS AIOC. So yeah, there's some really cool ASUS AIOC features on both Intel and AMD that we offer, whether it's like automatic curve optimization on, let's say, like the AMD platform, or our, you know, very robust and dynamic AIOC technology that we have on our Z series based motherboards. It is a very cool feature, man. Ultimately, you get a serious thumbs up, man. Fantastic. You did a great job. I really dig it. So let's see a couple of quick names that we got here. PGPCs gives it some love that says the build looks awesome. Michael says ROG Refinery. I'm liking that. Violet Haze. We've got Photonator. Well, I kind of like Photonator, right? Let's see also what we have right here. Ooh, Mr. Matt Lee saying lavishly lavender. I kind of like that. I like the lavishly lavender. That's a cool one. Miguel Santana, LiquifyMods, can you join that? If I'm correct, right? That was a custom res by George No Reason. Is that right? If you can drop that in the chat, I think that would be cool. Vitor also gives us one that says Frozen Kingston as far as the name. That's an interesting one. Mount Olympus. Ultraviolet, I think, rounds it out over there from Ray joining us there on YouTube. So overall, pretty cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, I think so H2O Computers, mine was Silver Surfer. Yeah, I could see that kind of Silver Surfer Cosmos kind of vibes, right? You know, it doesn't immediately kind of call the purple part, but definitely the silver part is there, and so I could dig that. So some really good name recommendations. LiquifyMods, man, you did a fantastic job. Gets definitely a big thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Oh, so recap there, right? He's saying is I was aiming for Photonator, but Photo works. Yeah, so Photonator. I get that Photonator. That's a kind of cool one. I can dig it. I can dig it. Cool. All right, guys, let's go ahead and go with one other one that we've got here. This is from our friends over at H2O Computers. All right, so our friends over at HO Computers, if you guys are not following them, you should be checking them out in terms of their social channel. They're definitely also a great member of our PCDIY community, great resource in terms of providing insight and expertise. They do a great job as a small kind of system integrator to be able to kind of build awesome systems. I love being able to kind of see always at bringing kind of their unique perspective in terms of what they do for their builds. It's always fun to be able to see. So here we definitely got some awesome builds that were submitted here, and this one's actually going to show off a couple of builds. Actually, I think 3 builds, but we're going to be focusing on the big one, the one that's inside actually the Hyperion. So let's go ahead and actually take a look here. All right, guys, so here you guys can actually check it out. So a very, very cool build that we actually have here. Overall, you actually see 3 very, very cool builds, right? We've got actually one here in our GT301 chassis. We've got one in our GT501 chassis. And then we also have one here in our GR701 or our Hyperion chassis. And also, you get an extra thumbs up right there for that Akira poster in the background. And also, this is a prior build that we've actually featured here on the stream, but I really loved this build. I think this is his personal build, if I'm not wrong. Now, another shot that I also always ask for when people submit the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, but not everybody does, is actually going to be that cable management shot. And H2O Computers did actually go ahead and share with us their actually essentially kind of cable management shot, which is pretty cool because it gives you just kind of perspective how a very experienced builder approaches it and tackles it and kind of talks about it, right? Hey, Tanashi, actually, I talked about it in the very beginning of the stream. So if you actually want to find out a little bit more information, I'd recommend you actually go back and check that initial portion right there. I also gave guidance in terms of actually where we have our formalized PR statement and additional information and how you can also reach out to our service and support team. Okay. So taking a look right here, we can actually see that we've got a really cool layout. And so in terms of the actual layout, it all makes sense, right? You've gone and used kind of the channels that you have there for cable management. I like that you've got the hook and loop fasteners there. I'm generally a fan more of hook and loop fasteners. There is some zip ties. Zip ties, I'm always a little bit nervous about them because they add a little bit of compression and they can pinch in on your cables. You can damage your cables, but there's a nice good balance right here. Also, this is a really cool one, guys, if you're not noticing it. So in this chassis, right, we actually have like the little controller that we have down here, but he's done a really cool thing where he's actually integrated in the Hyper M.2 add-in card, which is a secondary card that we have that comes included with certain boards to let you install an M.2 SSD. And so it's pretty cool because it essentially is just kind of a way to give you even more storage expansion, more flexibility, but still be able to access it, especially if you have like a more kind of complex layout, especially if it's like a hardline water-cooled system. This is kind of cool because you could still pop off the back, you could access that card, and you could swap out the M.2 SSD. It's a pretty interesting approach, and I don't know anybody else that I've ever seen do anything like that. So I kind of almost now call it the H2O hallmark of design when I see his builds. I'm like, does it have the the mounted Hyper M.2 add-in card, right? So taking a look here at the system, we can see we've got a really cool overall kind of theme. Now, we've got it in different colors here, and I'd love to see what is your guys' thoughts in terms of the overall color scheme. This blue one I think is really, really nice. I really like kind of the black and the light blue kind of combination right here. I think it looks really nice, but there's definitely some cool stuff that he's done here in terms that it's deceptive. It looks kind of simple, but there's some stuff that's a little bit different from the norm. So one of the really cool things you'll actually see right here is the distro that you have integrated right here. So the pump in the distro plate. This is actually in a spot that normally you wouldn't put this in. So the Hyperion, it's a dual 420 millimeter chassis. So you can actually put in 420 millimeter at the top and then also in the front. And this area right here normally has this ARGB light panel that's back there. And normally, if you're not using the light panel, you would remove it. You could put it like on your desk because you could connect it via like a USB port and you can have like a cool little RGB light panel and you would put fans there. But what he did is actually kind of like, how could I get creative? He actually put the distro on top of the light panel so you could see it. And I believe he told me that over time the bubbles will settle and it's a little bit clearer and you can see it. And that's pretty cool because you then get the lighting from the back and you still get the visual kind of textural elements and the topography that you have from that design, and it's all visible through that distro. So I thought that was really, really, really slick. You can then see you're not obstructing the anime matrix, which is pretty cool. Again, you've gone with a really nice clear and open block design. Now this one, it's a vertical mount versus a horizontal mount, but I like the kind of the contiguous vibe. It creates like a little bit of a waterfall effect that looks really cool. And you kind of goes from the top of the CPU and then drops down to the graphics. And it's just kind of really showing off the room and the flexibility that you have for a cool kind of water-cooled setup. I would probably say I'm not a fan of flow monitors, right? Sometimes users really, really like them. Sometimes builders like them as well. I think it kind of breaks up this really nice, beautiful line work that you've done in here, but I get it. You know, some people want to have that in their loop, so it's not an issue. I also like right here, I don't know if this is access for the drain, but it's a nice accessible kind of point if you had to do with that, but you're gonna always have to play around with the system to drain this out. Also cool to see the DIMM.2 installed in here, so that's going to give you more room to be able to easily access your M.2 SSDs if you want to be able to upgrade them. So overall, really, really nice job. When we pull back right here, we can see really, really cool kind of just design. The Hyperion has a really cool design distinct aesthetic, right? Where you've got that big X frame, kind of that skeletal frame design. You got those big handles. And I think that when you look at it, you can see that really cool run and work. It kind of creates this kind of contrasting perpendicular lines that look pretty cool, pretty slick, right? Pretty nice in terms of the overall design and layout choices here. So now we go into the next one. And I really like this one. So the blue is good, but my personal favorite color actually, guys, is yellow and orange. That's my personal favorite color. And I don't get to see that kind of that often in systems because not that many builders choose to kind of go like into the orange or the yellow vibe for a system. And this one kind of hits that balance of like, it's got a little bit of kind of that ambery kind of yellow, a little bit of kind of orange. I'd love to see this in person with no lighting that's kind of affecting a little bit of the hue or the color. Because I really actually do like this color combination. The black with the white, with then the clarity, and then that kind of, like I said, a little bit of amber vibe. I really, really like this one. Oh yeah, Snef. So Snef actually, he's one of the best guys that I've actually ever seen do some builds that kind of use that yellow and orange vibe. So it's really cool to see. He says, yes, this one is really great. I really like this color scheme. I think it really, really pops. I really do like this. I have feeling fewer builders will be using your products. Yeah, Howie, I do thank you definitely for your feedback, and rest assured, we're going to continue to be monitoring kind of feedback from our users. And like I talked about in the very beginning there, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to go ahead and reach out to our team, and we're definitely going to be there to answer your questions and to support you if you have any concerns. So again, you can circle back to the very beginning of the stream. I've shared the link, like I said, to our announcement page, to our service support, and they can definitely help to assist you if you've got any questions or comments, right? So Mr. Matt Lee also goes, well, we just departed winter and entered summer, right? Ray goes, almost like a gold. I would definitely agree, but overall, yeah, I really, really liked the vibe here as far as this color. So here we can go into the more kind of classic red kind of color scheme. And this one, red's always one of the hardest colors to photograph. So sometimes it doesn't come off the same way in real life that it does when you take the photo of it. Different cameras can play around with kind of their saturation and their gradation of it. So again, I think this one probably even looks even better in person, right? If you see it, I do like this kind of interesting vibe here where you have the clarity within this portion, and then you've got the red here, and then you've got this. I wonder what it might look like if you had a little bit more of a gradient play as opposed to kind of going all red. So I might almost maybe kind of go for like a white and red kind of color combination, which you've done a little bit here with some of the dims, which I think is kind of interesting. But still, for me, I think this one is my personal favorite. And the blue I think is really nice. I think a lot of people are going to like the blue, right? This one is kind of similar to the other one, but I still think I'm vibing a little bit more on this one than there. But again, some of these are kind of hard in terms of that regard. But here you guys can see that really cool, nice, clean run work that he's done. Really nice bends. The bends are really, really nicely polished. And also even the use of the unifans are kind of cool because they give that little kind of mirrored effect, which is pretty slick too, right? So here we can see what it looks like with no RGB lighting. I always am happy when people provide this photo because I always get to kind of see how does the system look like without even any RGB lighting. And to me, I'd love this system just running even if it didn't have any RGB lighting, or if you just used like a soft white and you lit it and you had it look like that, that to me looks awesome. You've got a little bit of a heavy light, you know, from the picture, right, that's creating a little bit of a glare. But if we kind of pulled that back and it was just there and it had also the tempered glass side panel on there, which would kind of just diffuse that lighting a little bit more, I think this would look really nice with just like a soft white light. I think it would look really, really slick. So I really do like that. So overall, man, very, very cool build. Like always, clean, polished, and well executed. You can guys see a little bit here sometimes what we talk about the challenges of when you go with like a vertical versus a horizontal, where you're kind of blocking off some kind of portions right here. But again, I think that the overall look and feel that you have, you absolutely nailed it. I love this kind of drop down effect that creates that depth and contrast, and just how that's all tied in with the distribution. It looks really, really clean and really nicely done. So very, very cool. Let's go ahead and take a look at his submission form, and then we'll kind of finish recapping here with some people's kind of commentary on the build itself. So give me 1 second to bring up his submission form. All right, so here we go. So again, this is going to be from Mike over at H2O guys, H2O Computers. You guys can check them out on Facebook. Just search H2O Computers 808. And in terms of the build have a theme, it's all ASUS. What are 3 words that you would use to describe the build? Extreme, performant, and futuristic. And I definitely agree. I mean, when you're talking about like a Hyperion, like an extreme motherboard, that high performance GPU, that memory, everything about this is definitely in the extreme and the performant. And the future, it has definitely that kind of future performance vibe to it. So it's pretty cool. Does the build have a name? Hyperspace. I think that's cool. I really dig that name, and I think it goes kind of cool. That would almost make me want to go with more with like that like blue or purple type of color scheme vibe, but I'm really digging, like I said, that little bit more kind of ambery, kind of orange yellow kind of color scheme that you showed off. So core hardware that we've got here in this build, it's going to be in a Hyperion GR701. Then you've got a Crosshair XX70E Extreme board, 7950X, 64 gigs of memory that's in there, a TUF Gaming 4090 OC that's been water cooled. That's my opinion the best card that we have to water cool, because like if you make the adoption into the Strix card, you're paying for like that super premium milled vapor chamber thermal solution, although the thermal solution on the TUF Gaming is very good too. But if you're not going to use the thermal solution, it makes more sense, I think, to go and water cool the TUF Gaming card than it would be to water cool the ROG STRIX card. Then you've got 2 Western Digital PCIe NVMe M.2 SSDs in there, 7 Lian Li SL120 fans, and then that's all powered by a Thor 1200 watt power supply. In terms of the water cooling hardware, it's pretty much EK across the board. So EK Rad, where he's got an X360 and a P360. He's then got the O11D Evo DDC distribution plate that's in there. That's the Mana G2. Then of course the blocks are of course going to be from EK, satin finished tubings and fittings and extenders, right? That is all kind of incorporated in there. The vertical mount is also actually from EK as well, flow indicator and temperature plug sensor as well. And then coolant, if anybody's wondering about the coolant, he went with actually, I think, kind of like the best choice, right? Which if you're always looking for kind of like the safe choice and one that still gives you flexibility from color, is it's cryofuel and just the clear coolant. So it's just cryofuel clear. And that's great because it's probably the best long-term reliable solution to go in a lot of situations when you're water cooling. Also using cable mod custom cables in there, which of course look great, and big fans of cable mod. The ROG M.2 Hyper Card, Lian Li riser cable, and then frosted acrylic tubes, which are coming actually from Corsair, 14 millimeter. And then he's also got thermal pads in there from Thermalright and from Gel as well for the thermal paste. So what was the budget? No clue. The client sent in the parts staggered as we waited for products to hit the market. So I also reused some hardware from previous builds. Overall, he's kind of factoring that it was probably somewhere around like $6,000 in terms of the actual budget. What were they most proud of in terms of the build? Its overall final form, and I would agree, this is a huge amount of time and effort in terms of completing a build. Is there anything that they would change about the build? More time to clear the micro bubbles in the distro plate before the photos, right? The client now says he's really happy with it and they're clear. So yeah, I'm sure that even looks better right now, right? How long did it take him to put it together? About 1 day of planning, and then the fitment and kind of getting everything executed, which is about 3 days. And then what is the system mostly used for? Client uses it for upcoming Diablo 4, Sea of Thieves, and other AAA titles. He loves the 4K performance and the thermal performance. And then Mike notes his overall favorite feature is he loves Armory Crate. He's a big fan, I guess, of being able to monitor the system, tweak and tune it, and also be able to, of course, easily adjust all the lighting. So overall, very, very cool. There you guys go. Overall, a very cool system. Let's see some feedback right here. So Mr. Matt Lee says, well, the Hyperion got well and truly H2O'd. Good work, Mike. Looking forward to seeing more of your work as always. Very, very cool. Chris notes he really likes the color. I would agree. I think that the color came out great, right? QWERTY goes, it should be called Good Girl. I really like the hyperspace name. I think it looks pretty cool. David also notes that it looks great with no RGB, and I agree. I think the RGB, non-RGB look still looked really, really nice on that, right? And then PGPZ has also commented on my commentary there. It says, is that can confirm the problem of photographing red RGB. Yeah, it's definitely a tricky part. And I think the best guys in the game, you know, individuals I think like Sneff, Mr. Matt Lee, and other builders and modders will tell you there's a huge art to the photography of building your systems, right? The time, the skill to kind of be able to know when to expose, when to not expose, right? You know, how to maybe apply some post-processing, how to deal with reflections, right? So many other kind of factors. It can also really help to kind of just elevate things even further. But man, Mike, you did a fantastic job. Great build all the way around. So I think maybe we can get one more build in here, guys, before I wrap things up. Let me see if I have one ready. I don't think I had one ready. So I'm going to see if I can go ahead and get it in there. So give me 1 second. Let me see if I have one already primed and ready here. All right, let's see what we got here. See if I have one. Okay, let's go. Well, no, that one's. See if we can go with an air-cooled build. We just do two water, so let me go see if we can do an air-cooled. Okay, let's go with this one, guys. Give me 1 second, and I'll bring this one up here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring down these images here, and let's see what we have here. This is going to be just the TUF Gaming GT502 white build, is what they have coined it. And builder-wise, let's go here. This is going to be from Atorax Modding. Hopefully I'm saying that right. All right, here we guys goes. Let's go ahead and take a look at this build here, and let me just bring these images down really quick. And again, if you guys are ever interested in being part of the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, just go ahead and join us in the PCDIY group. You can go ahead and send in your submission, and that will be the easiest way for me to be able to review your system and then be able to kind of get everything together so that I can go ahead and share it here on the stream. All right, let's bring in these images and we will be good to go. All right. Okay, perfect. Let's see what we got going on here. Okay, so here we can see we've got a white build. Very cool in terms of the overall kind of external design aesthetic. So this is our pretty new GT502, which is all white. It's actually really cool in terms of it being all white because the chassis is actually white, the inside is actually white, the cables are white. So even compared to some other chassis where it's like white part of it, but maybe there are other parts that are not white, it really does provide a really bold, bright, and open space. Also, it doesn't have any fitment or clearance issues with larger graphics cards, and there's some kind of cool design points that we've done to even give you more flexibility in terms of how you can kind of work with the chassis. Overall, liking though the bold and bright aesthetic here. We've got that very kind of popular kind of purple kind of color scheme that we see within a lot of builds right now. I think it looks really cool. It complements the kind of the white design. We can see that we are also utilizing here looks like a dual series graphics card, which is cool. Dual series are very popular, right? They're a little bit more on the compact side. So, you know, we've got like ROG STRIX, we've got TUF Gaming, and then we have our dual series. So a good balance in terms of still giving you a cool, quiet, generally a more compact card as well. You know, where you don't necessarily have to go into a more expensive card, right? If you're just really looking to try to get, you know, solid GPU, built well, good performance, this is a nice option right here, right? So really like that. You can see right here, this is of course a split chamber chassis design. So of course, all that stuff is going to be packed in the back in terms of all the cables, and you've got tons of room there to be able to add in all the fans. So that's always the interesting debate too, though, when you go with this type of chassis, is that you kind of almost have to fill in all the fans. If not, some people feel they look empty. I don't think you really have to, but from a cost perspective, it does kind of almost force you to why sometimes a traditional chassis can still be more sensible in some ways. From an aesthetic layout, you're not forced to necessarily fill everything out in some ways, where if here, let's say you didn't have these fans here, some people might feel that it's empty or it doesn't look right, right? So it is just kind of interesting where, you know, it can kind of require you to have to kind of fill out the system kind of more thoroughly, right? So nice job. They've gone ahead and go with the white cables. We can see right here, like I was talking about, even the internal cables that were coming from the chassis, we did those all on white. So they really do work well for people that are looking for these white themed builds. Nice kind of cable routing. Everything has been tightly cleaned up and routed well. I got no issues right there. It's good. Got the nice little kind of rear shot right there showing a little bit of the lighting, the little TUF Gaming logo right there lit up. You see the nice spacing right there. And then that nice side profile. This is just clean, well executed, nicely laid out, and it's going to be a cool, quiet, and performance system. This is definitely kind of my type of build. This is what I would probably be building. I do have some systems that are, of course, liquid water cooled as well. But I really do like kind of just the sensibility and clean layout. It's not overdone. It's not overcomplicated. Cable management is on point. Nice balance in terms of the components, right? You can see we've got a Prime Series motherboard, so they didn't spend a huge amount of money. They just wanted something that was going to give them a solid, stable, and reliable platform. Good cooler configuration. You've got your memory in there. You've got your dual base graphics card, and then you've got, of course, a lot of RGB lighting for your fans in there, and all inside of that GT502. So HO Computers notes right here is I just finished my first GT502 build. Such an awesome case. Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I really do like this actually case. Michael also is actually noting that it's a really cool build. I really do like the kind of the overall design aesthetic. I think it looks nice as well, right? And Miguel also notes clean and simple and beautifully done. Yep, I would definitely agree. I think it looks good. Let's go ahead and bring up his submission form here. And let me see what we've got right here. So give me 1 second to bring up that submission form. Want to be able to go ahead and read that off there. And I think, yeah, we'll leave it on that picture. I think that's a good picture right there for the build. So this is going to be from, Adarex. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Adarex Modding, right? From Thomas is the name of the actual builder, right? Does the build have a theme? There was no theme. What are 3 words used to describe the build? Is ASUS cool and white. Does the build have a name? TUF GT502 white build. Yeah, I think that makes sense. In terms of the core hardware, it looks like they were definitely trying to hit like a balance in terms of, I think, the like performance to cost, right? And kind of not trying to go crazy in any one direction. And I think the specification here is a really nice balance. So it's a 13600K. We then have a Z790 Prime D4, so that's the DDR4 version. So that's a very solid board. That's actually the board below this model right here. I think they're actually using the P that we have there, right? Z790 P Prime D4, then 32 gigabytes of memory that's installed there. They also then have the dual 3070, GT502, and then the Lanley SL360 V2, and then they also have the SL Infinity fans in there, right? And then they also have custom white cables, of course, which you can see right there. What was the overall build for the budget? About $1,600 without the graphics card and memory, but in total, kind of for everything, about $2,500. What aspect of the build were they most proud of? Is just the overall, the choice of the components for the price. Yeah, like I said, I think this hits a really good balance in terms of kind of price to performance, and it looks really nice, right? Is there anything that they would change about the build? They would upgrade the graphics card, or maybe they would want to go for a white graphics card. I'm assuming with a build like this with a lot of white, you might want to go for something maybe like our Prime Series card, which would be in white, or maybe one of our dual cards in white, right? Or of course, if you had a bit more budget, you could be maybe an ROG STRIX card in white, right? How long did it take to put together the system? About 3 to 4 hours. Right? What is the system used for? For gaming, Call of Duty, Rainbow Six, Hogwarts Legacy. Very cool, man. Hopefully you're enjoying the system, enjoying some gaming this weekend. And favorite ASUS functions or features. The GT502 is really well designed. It's very functional, and I'm actually a big fan of Armory Crate in terms of just, I'm assuming, being able to monitor, manage, and kind of adjust all his RGB lighting. So overall, pretty good. Very nicely done. So overall, very, very cool. Hey, project. Actually, we talked about that in the very beginning of the stream, and there was actually an update that I provided in that regard. So feel free to go ahead and actually check out the first part of the stream for a recap in that regard. And then if you have any more questions, you can definitely feel free to reach out to our service and support team. All right, guys, that pretty much wraps up our stream there. So 3 cool builds that we have in terms of our PCDIY Builder Spotlight. And again, if anybody's interested in the future in terms of submitting your build for a feature, feel free to go ahead and submit it in terms of our PCDIY group and check out the actual Google submission forms, and we'll go from there. So as always, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and best of luck with your builds, and hope to see you in our ASUS PCDIY group. So take care, take it easy, have a good weekend.